Fantastic. Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to this virtual meeting of North Tyneside Council's Housing Subcommittee. Following the introduction of regulations by the government enabling local authorities to conduct their meetings remotely in the light of the current coronavirus pandemic. My name is Councillor Andy Newman. I'm the chair of North Tyneside Council's Housing Subcommittee. This meeting is being streamed live on the council's YouTube channel to enable members of the press and the public to observe the meeting, and I welcome everybody who is watching. Before we move on to the agenda, I would like to make it clear who is participating in the meeting. I would like to ask everyone present to confirm their attendance at the meeting. In order to do this, I shall call out their names, so names of the members of the committee. After I call your name, please turn on your microphone and camera and introduce yourself. So Councillor Linda Bell.
Yeah, I'm Councillor Linda Bell and the Wallsend councillor. Okay.
Fantastic. Councillor Linda Dark.
Councillor Linda Dark from Killingworth Ward.
Councillor John Hunter.
Howden Ward.
Councillor Pam McIntyre. Don't believe is here yet. So Councillor Erin Parker Leonard.
Hello, Councillor Erin Parker Leonard, Killingworth Ward.
Fantastic. Councillor Alan Percy.
It's Councillor Alan Percy from Churton Ward.
Councillor Matthew Thurloway.
It's like being back at school. I'm Councillor Matthew Thurloway and I represent Wallsend Ward.
Fantastic. Councillor Joan Walker.
Turn the mic on.
I think it's still on mute.
I'll just do that again, sorry. So I'm Councillor Joan Walker, Longben Ward.
Fantastic. Councillor Frances Wheatman. Don't believe she's attended yet. Councillor Matt Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Matt Wilson from the Preston Ward in North Shields.
Fantastic. Can the officers in attendance also introduce themselves? So Richard Brooke.
Hi, Richard Brooke, Housing Growth Manager for North Tyneside Council.
Brilliant. Lee Nesbitt.
Lee Nesbitt, Asset Intelligence and Logistics Manager, North Tyneside Council.
Es Martlew.
Es Martlew, Service Manager for North Tyneside Council.
And Emma Fagan.
Emma Fagan from Democratic Services.
Brilliant. We also have other officers joining the meeting to provide technical support in relation to the streaming of this meeting. To ensure that the meeting runs smoothly, can I remind participants to please turn off their microphone and camera when not speaking. Only speak when invited to do so by myself, and activate your microphone and camera before speaking. If any member or officer wishes to speak, please use the hand raising button. Alternatively, use the chat facility. We'll now begin the business on the agenda. So can I take apologies for absences?
We've received no apologies for absence, Chair.
No problem. Has there been any substitute members?
No substitute members.
Brilliant. Can I ask any member to declare any interest they may have on the agenda? Okay. Councillor Thurloway?
Yes, I have a non-registrant, one of those interest in the empty home standard on the agenda because my dad works for North Tyneside Council.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Councillor Thurloway.
Chair, before any further, just in case my computer's going to restart in 1 hour and 24 minutes, just in case they're lovely. So if I disappear, you know where I am.
No problem, Councillor Hunter. Can I ask the members to confirm the minutes of the last meeting that was on the 23rd of November 2020? Can we confirm the minutes?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Fantastic.
Agreed.
Item 5 is the Affordable Homes Programme update. Can I ask Richard Brooks to take us through the report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've been coming to this committee for about the last 7 years, and I can safely say that this year with the global pandemic has obviously been one like no other. This report is to provide an update on progress against the Affordable Homes Programme, and also to talk about some of the plans going forwards. As many of the committee will be aware, in 2013, the Cabinet confirmed its commitment to significantly increasing the number of affordable homes that were to be delivered in North Tyneside. To date, the programme has been a success, and 1,650 affordable homes, including over 500 homes directly delivered by the authority, have been delivered in North Tyneside since 2013. This figure, for comparison, is more than double the number of affordable homes that was delivered in the 10 years prior to the Affordable Homes programme commencing. Building on this success and considering the external challenges facing the housing market, not least by the global pandemic that we've experienced, in January 2021, the Cabinet approved a report called Supporting the Ambition for the Borough Through Housing Growth. And this plan was to provide an extension to the Affordable Homes programme to bring it in line with the delivery of the local plan by 2032. This also increased the delivery target from 3,000 to 4,000 new affordable homes. Also contained within the report, Cabinet approved a new ambitious 10-year delivery plan for the council that will see a further 350 new affordable homes directly delivered by the council or through the bringing back of long-term empty properties. This will see around about £50 million worth of new investment in affordable homes, in affordable council housing in the next 10 years. In terms of some of the detail from 2020 to 2021, obviously progress of delivery of affordable homes was severely hampered by the global pandemic, and in the last 12 months only 90 new affordable homes were brought forward, caused no least by the significant delays to delivery that certainly the first few months of the financial year with a total lockdown of the construction industry. Having said that, nonetheless, 12 affordable homes were built by the council in the last 12 months, with 9 new build homes being delivered at the site of former Bawtry Court and 3 new build homes at Edwin Grove. And as mentioned earlier, the milestone for the council was the Cabinet approval for the HRA to deliver the new 10-year delivery programme. This will also include utilising modern methods of construction and trialling new energy efficiency measures wherever possible. Feasibility studies on the new sites within the programme will be undertaken, and early consultation has taken place with ward members on sites identified, and obviously further consultation with members and residents will form an integral part of bringing these sites forward. With regards to working strategically with registered providers and care providers, the delays have obviously hampered the registered providers as well, and there's been no delivery from registered providers in the last 12 months. However, encouragingly, work is well progressed now at the former Miners Welfare Club in Dudley, which will see 11 new affordable homes delivered by Benicia, and planning permissions also being granted for a further 32 affordable homes at Castle Square in Backworth, and also planning approval for some specialist housing in Forest Hall has been granted. Work is also underway to deliver 32 specialist homes on land northwest of Briding Way in Backworth, with 28 extra care apartments providing housing for the client group with dementia, and 4 bungalows for clients with autism. In terms of the private developers, the big builders, obviously we were forecasting 50 new homes to be delivered through Section 106 agreements this year. And despite the issues in relation to COVID, the market for housing in North Tyneside remains strong, and we expect the delivery of affordable homes to increase once again as the strategic sites at Merton and Killingworth come forward in the next few years. In terms of the North Tyneside Trading Company, the North Tyneside Trading Company, through its subsidiary Aurora Affordable Homes, has been committed to supporting the ambitions of the authority in providing more affordable housing. The company's continued to pursue an acquisition strategy of buying homes from the open market, and to date has been successful in this in their endeavours. They've purchased 23 homes by the end of the financial year, bringing the total number of homes owned or in the legal process to be owned to 68. The company has firm plans to increase this number by up to 100 by the summer of 2022. In terms of empty home progress, 3 long-term empty properties were brought back into use of affordable housing, with work also underway at Charlotte Street in Wallsend to bring 11 problematic empty properties back into use. This year, the authority has also purchased long-term empty homes at Seymour Street and Waterfall Road, and work has just recently started to make the improvements on the external of those properties and to make them safe for people to go inside. A further 5 empty homes are currently with the authority's legal services, who are working with the property owners solicitors in relation to securing those for affordable use by the council. The Empty Homes programme continues to target properties which have the greatest impact on communities and which support vulnerable housing markets, with the aim to recycle any capital investment in the schemes back into the ongoing support for empty homes work. In terms of some of the challenges to delivery of affordable homes, it remains very difficult to predict with any certainty how future progress of affordable housing will shape up. The housing markets are shaped by a wide range of economic factors, and also both national and local levels, and also with things like global pandemics. The unknown and the uncertainty that they can cause obviously make it very difficult to predict. We do know, however, that within the local plan, a large number of sites have been identified to come forward before 2032, and using that intelligence and the knowledge of the sites, we expect a large number of affordable housing to be secured through the delivery of homes by private house builders. Not least, obviously, at the large strategic sites of Killingworth and Merton Gap, where 5,000 homes are expected to be delivered, with obviously a high percentage of affordable housing on them. In terms of the impact of COVID-19, as we said, obviously, for a period of time, the housing market shut down, all construction ceased, building sites were shut. However, it has yet again proven to be a resilient industry, and was one of the first to open back up again in sort of end of May, June time. And again, the construction businesses have got back to work fairly quickly, and we expect delivery to remain strong in North Tyneside in the coming years. And finally, obviously, in terms of government policy and housing changes fairly rapidly, and obviously at the moment the current white paper planning for the future is under consultation. It's identified potentially several changes around the planning system, which might include a replacement of Section 106 requirements in favour of a levy, and obviously we will just have to keep an eye on this to see how that plays out going forwards. And that's it from me, Chair. Happy to answer any questions.
Brilliant, fantastic. Thank you very much for that report. Can I invite members to ask any questions they may have? Would any Councillor Wilson?
Thank you. Thank you for the report, Richard. The 10-year plan going forward. You mentioned a figure of £50 million related to that plan, described as an ambitious plan. I'm thinking in housing terms, £50 million sounds a lot of money. Doesn't actually buy you a lot. If you were building new properties, for example, from scratch, maybe what would you get, 300 or 400, which over 10 years, to my mind, doesn't sound very ambitious. I'm just wondering if we've sort of done if there's any benchmarking available. What are others doing? What does ambitious really mean for our borough?
Yeah, putting into the context of previous delivery. So the council has, in the last 10 years delivered around about 530 affordable homes directly, but of that 530, over 300 of those were due to the PFI schemes and the sheltered accommodation. So in delivery terms, you know, we're looking at around about 200 new build council homes. You're absolutely right that, you know, building homes is expensive, but actually the wider issue, rather than the finances, the land availability. Obviously, the council has limited land holdings, and what it has decided to do is to allocate some of their larger land holdings, certainly in Merton and Killingworth, to the dedication around affordable housing provision directly delivered. The £50 million is actually the amount of money built up within the housing revenue account capital plan. So obviously the way the housing revenue account is funded means that any surplus within that account is put towards the provision of new homes. So obviously the rent's collected from the existing stock, the homes are maintained and repaired, and then obviously any excess cash is in there. That amount can change. It's a 30-year business plan, so it is a build-up of accumulated sums over a period of time. But it also is, you know, every single penny of that 50 million is attributed to one of the sites that is available. So, you know, in terms of ambitious, I believe it is ambitious. It's going to deliver more council housing than has been delivered in the last 10 years. It's going to include large sites, which hasn't been done in probably 50 years in North Tyneside. And it is, I guess, using all available capital money that, you know, that's within the housing revenue account at the moment.
Thank you very much. I'm aware it was a challenging question, but that was a great answer. Thank you.
Fantastic. Councillor Furloway.
Thanks, Chair. I have two questions. Are you happy to take them separately, or do you want them one after another?
However they come, I'll write them down in case I forget.
Well. Just the first one. Obviously, we're very good at building affordable housing in the last sort of 10 years. Why is that? Simply, why have we become very good at doing this? Is it political will, or is it something else?
Do you mean in terms of the council directly delivering housing?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's there were significant changes to the way that housing was funded, and that allowed us to all councils, not just North Tyneside. It allowed all councils to essentially start delivering again. Council housing, you know, there's a long tradition of councils building homes, and then there was a long period of time where councils didn't build homes or weren't able to build homes. So I think the changes to that have allowed councils to do that. I think North Tyneside have been very, very proactive at building homes wherever possible. And certainly I think the Cabinet report in 2013 sort of recognised that the council had a role to play in increasing the pace and scale, which was very much the drive of that Cabinet report. And obviously since then, you know, it's remained that the 3,000 home target has remained a prominent part of the Our North Tyneside plan. And I think the latest Cabinet report in January has obviously just extended that from 3,000 to 4,000 and then aligned it to the local plan.
That's great. How do we compare to our neighbours, our neighbouring authorities?
I don't have the figures to hand in terms of delivery of affordable housing. I can easily find that out, but I would obviously just point out that it's probably comparing apples with pears, because every local authority's housing revenue account, for example, will be different depending on how many homes they have. But I can certainly find out in the North East region how many homes each council has delivered. But would you want, are you talking about directly delivering, or are you talking about how many affordable homes in total have been delivered?
How about both?
How about both? Okay, no worries.
That's great. Yeah, and that's my questions. So thank you.
Councillor Hunter?
Yes. Richard, do you have anything to do with housing repairs?
No.
Is that Lee? Is
Maybe
it?
the next one, Councillor Hunter. I think that might be the next item. I think that might be the next item, Councillor Hunter.
All right.
Yeah. Sorry, Lee.
Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask you, Richard, in regards to the numbers of delivery of affordable homes programme, because you mentioned at the start of your presentation the cabinet met in 2013 to deliver 3,000 homes, affordable homes within the next 10 years. So I was having a quick look at the figures given in Appendix 2.
Yeah.
And I was also happy to see that that number had been increased to 4,000 to be delivered by 2032. Have I got that right? But I was looking at the figures, as I say, looking at the cumulative total, and I saw the cumulative total by 2023, which is obviously 10 years after the 2013, that we hadn't met the 3,000 figure. We're actually short by 877, but then again by 2032 the 4,000 figure reappears. So I was just trying to work out how is it that we're going to jump from being behind to meet the target. And I wondered if you could explain where, because that would mean that there will be a lot of affordable house building within the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think back in 2013 there was a very clear ambition, and a time frame of 10 years was set to deliver 3,000 homes. Obviously, since then and the adoption of the local plan, what the local plan has given us is a very clear steer on delivery of homes of all 10 years by 2032. So it identifies potential sites. Some of those sites have planning applications in place. Some of them haven't got planning applications in place as of yet. So what it allows us to do is predict with more certainty, because the 2032 figure gives us a clear stake in the ground in terms of it being the end of the local plan. So we can't control as an authority when private developers are going to bring forward sites. We have an idea on when we expect some sites to come forward, but we don't have direct control of them. So if you take Merton and Killingworth, for an example, back in 2013, there may have been an estimation that some of the affordable housing that we know are associated with those sites would have been brought forward quicker because the sites might have been brought quicker. But there is an element of estimation in there because we're not in control of that as a local authority. What we do have control of is the local plan time frame. So we know that within the 2032, we're expecting a large number of those sites to come forward, giving us more certainty on when the homes will be delivered.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered if I could ask a quick supplementary on the question I've just asked there, Chair. Would that be okay? Yeah,
that's fine.
So would I be right in thinking you're expecting private developers to give the Fund 106 money for the building of more affordable homes within the next 2 to 3 years?
No. At the moment, there is no sort of policy around receiving commuted sums rather than homes. At the moment, that we haven't accepted any commuted sums monies in favour of affordable homes for a number of years now. So at present, all planning applications that meet the right level of 25% in terms of viability over 11 units we expect the developers to deliver homes rather than give money. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yes, thank you.
But does anybody else have any other questions? No. Well, Richard, before you go, I've just got 2 quick questions for myself. When it comes to the amount of affordable homes that's been delivered, is there a breakdown of the type of accommodation? So adapted bungalows, 2-bedroom accommodation, 1-bedroom accommodation, that type of stuff. Do you have a list that you could circulate showing the breakdown of the type of homes which are being provided?
I've certainly got that for the council. I might have to have a look to see whether I've got it for all 1,650. But yeah, I'm not going to guarantee I have, but I've certainly got. I think I'll have a good look for you. Councillor Newman.
Well, I was going to say, well, at least, I mean, if we could have a look at what the authority is delivering, because that's the thing that we've got most control over. So that's probably the main one. But if you could see if you could find out for all, it would be appreciated. The second question I've got is very similar to what Councillor Wilson was talking about, and that's with how ambitious it is. Now, I'm not saying it is or isn't ambitious, but if you look at Appendix 1 on page 14, we have a breakdown of the type of accommodation that's been provided and the cost associated with it. Now, I'm not an expert in cost of building sites or anything like that. We know that building housing is very expensive, and we always like to try to get the best for our money. And I know you alluded to a very small sentence before during your presentation about new methods of construction, especially modular and prefabricated buildings. And I'm wondering if we've done much investigation, or are we still looking at more traditional style buildings?
We've done a lot of investigation into modern methods of construction. I think it's a very interesting area, and it's one that's going to continue to grow. At the moment, there's no real indication that it is any cheaper to build modular than it is to build non-modular. There are other upside benefits of modular construction, as in the environmental efficiency, quality, things like that. The finish, the speed. So it's a good product for affordable, which is why we keep looking at it, because speed of delivery is great in affordable housing. It's not so great in when you're trying to sell homes, because you need to control it. We've got two or three of the schemes in there are husk schemes that you'll see, which is using garage sites, which is a modular solution to returning garage sites back into homes, which is very innovative.
Was there one in Battle Hill?
Yeah, there's one in Battle Hill. It will be one of the first ones we're currently looking at the moment. And then there's, so it's Falmouth Road is the first scheme, the garage site in Falmouth Road in Collingwood, and then there's some other garage sites in Battle Hill. So that's the first place for it. I think where you're building small numbers of homes, which a lot of these are as well, modular isn't as efficient. It works better on larger sites. So certainly when we get down the list to some of the larger sites, it is something that we'll continue to look at. But yeah, it's still there. We still continue to look at modular methods of construction, but that, it's not. There's a lot of different factors that go into deciding whether or not it can be used on a site.
No problem. Well, thank you very much. That answers those questions. Councillor Hunter, you've got your hand up. Would you like to ask another question? Councillor Hunter?
Sort of do repairs me questions.
I was going to say, if you lower your hand till we get to that stage, Councillor Hunter, it would be appreciated.
Get my glasses on.
No problem.
No.
It's not no, John.
It's on my screen. It's off.
It's still up, Councillor Hunter. No problem. I think that's everything, Richard. So I just want to say thank you very much for attending the meeting, and thank you very much for a report. So thank you very much. We can move on now to item number 6, which is the empty home standard. Can I invite Lee and Ez to take us through the presentation?
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening, everybody. Emma, do you want me to bring the presentation up?
Yes, Lee, if you can do, and that means that you'll have control of scrolling through.
No problem. Right, can everybody see that all right?
Yep, that's displayed for everyone.
Brilliant. I can't see anybody's hands, so if anyone's got any questions, they'll obviously need to put their hand up so that Councillor Newman can see them. Otherwise, I'm flying a little bit blind here, but we'll see how we go. So, good evening, everybody. My name is Lee Nesbitt, Asset Intelligence and Logistics Manager for North Tyneside Council. I'm joined by Ez Martlew, who's one of our service managers within our repairs section, who actually looks after the delivery of empty homes. And basically what we've done is we're being asked to come today to give you a bit of an overview on the moving in and moving out standard, what the impact of COVID has had on delivery of our empty homes process, and then obviously the next steps of where we need to go. So I'm hoping that's why you've invited us. I'm going to assume that it is. So we will crack on. So some of you may remember back in January last year, feels like a lifetime ago, we actually presented to you. And what we did was we talked about everything that had gone previously with regards to the empty homes process. Was started back in 2012. We told you where we were in 2012, and then we took you through the years to basically where we were in 2020. And then what we did was we give you an idea of what our plans were to continue to improve that service from 2020 and beyond. During that presentation, we did actually bring you up to speed with some of the cabinet members' budget proposals with regards to the housing revenue account, specifically to the empty home standard and delivery of empty homes. At the time, it was made clear to us by yourselves that you would like members involved in those reviews. Historically, it had always just been done with tenants. So what we did was we cast the net out to the elected members within the borough. And actually, there was quite a few members put their hand up and said, yeah, want to be involved, which was absolutely fantastic. So what we did with tenants and members, and I think when I was speaking to the team, I think this is probably one of those occasions, hopefully more to come, we're actually getting elected members and tenants in a room together, actually driving service improvement, which has been absolutely fantastic. What we did, that review was conducted over 2 sessions. The session 1, which is around about mid-February, that was very much around scrutiny. And the second session, which was sort of early March, we called it workshop, but it was very much more classroom based. So the first session was actually out and about in the empty properties, looking at the condition of the properties, getting a good feel of the empty homes. The second session was kind of looking at the data, but the actual sessions were really well attended. So that was absolutely fantastic. So the first session was very much around looking at our what we call pre-inspections. So this is when a tenant is leaving the tenancy and they are handing their keys in. What we have is we have a moving out standard, which links into the tenancy agreement. So for those who are familiar with the tenancy agreement, when a tenant terminates their tenancy, there's a lot of things that they have to do. What that moving in standard does is it just puts that into a bit more plain English, explains what we expect a tenant to do with regards to clearing the property of all their furniture and their belongings, cleaning it, making sure that it's any damage is being made good. And the idea of it is making sure that it's in a reasonable condition, ready to be let to another tenant. So what we did was we actually randomly selected keys that had come through on that particular day. We had both tenants and members split into separate groups, but joined. So we had tenants and members in one minibus, we had tenants and members in another minibus, and those minibuses went around the borough and went into those properties, sort of looking at the condition that those had been left in by the previous tenants. Quite interesting where the feedback from the groups were not a lot of the properties met that moving out standard. I think it was certainly suggested that as a landlord, we should be doing a lot more tenancy enforcement. Certainly with those particular tenants who had left those properties, I think there was a feeling that with some sort of early intervention with those tenants, we could have identified that the tenants hadn't been looking after those properties the way they should have. And certainly the group agreed that if the tenants had asked to move to another property as part of our transferring process, the decision would have been no, simply because the tenants hadn't kept their properties up to the standard that we expect. So that was certainly quite interesting. As part of that first day as well, we did what we call post-inspection visits. So this is where the repair service, so this is where Ez and the team they've got the keys, they've done all the works. The property now should meet that moving in standard, ready for the new tenants to move in. So again, we randomly selected keys. Those groups of tenants and members got back in the minibus, went back out to the borough, went back into those properties. Again, we tried to make sure that it was clear and transparent as possible. Wanted to make sure there was no sort of, oh, you've picked those ones and all that sort of stuff. So it was simply exclude the phrase. It was a big sort of bowl full of keys. We randomly selected keys and away the teams went. The feedback was that actually the repairs that had been done to those properties were to a very good standard. But one of the big things that came out loud and clear from the groups was that the declaration was just overwhelming in some of those properties. What they were saying is that because declaration is actually a tenant's responsibility, some of these properties, the tenants, the concern was that actually there was just too much for tenants to do. And even though we have a pay and pack scheme where we provide declaration materials for new tenants, the feedback was actually, I think it's just unreasonable to expect a tenant to try and do that level of declaration on day one of their tenancy starting. So what we also found was, and this was the second session, so this was very much the classroomy side. So this was looking at the data, and Ez has got a few slides that he'll take you through with what the data told us. But just in quick summary, there was too many new tenant repairs. What we're identifying is that because there's such a pressure to turn that property around quickly to get the new tenant in, we'd always agreed with tenants that sort of small minor repairs will be done after the tenant moved in. Now that does make sense. Your gate catch or those little tiny little repairs that actually they're not life or death, and they could be done after the tenant moved in. Now what we did find though was when we looked at the data, on average every tenant was getting nearly 3 repairs per tenancy. Now from a sort of a council point of view, that means that that tenant is ringing the contact centre. The contact centre is diagnosing the repair. They're raising the repair in their system. We're allocating that to a tradesperson. That tradesperson's getting in their van, travelling to that property to do the appointment. Now, you think 1 or 2 isn't a problem, but when we do 1,000 to 1,200 voids a year, every new tenant's getting around about 3 repairs. You're getting into the realms of 2,800, 3,000 repairs a year just for new tenants. And when we start looking at the data, you think, well, actually, if we'd just done those repairs when the property was empty, okay, it might have took an extra day to get that property turned around, but actually that would have actually identified a huge efficiency saving for the authority. So again, that was something that the tenants and members identified. And then what we also identified, there was repairs as well that should have been done that were actually part of the existing moving in standard. Again, not life or death, certainly didn't make the property not habitable, but again, these are repairs that we would have expected to be done when the property was empty. And then what we also did was we reviewed the pay and pack offer. Again, because the feedback was very much, the declaration was just too much, there was a lot of conversation around, well, actually, us giving a new tenant some paint and some rollers and some brushes, is it really working? We spend around about £70,000 a year. Not all tenants are happy with that. And again, what we were challenged as a group was to come up with doing something different, something that would actually work, something the tenants would want. And obviously, we'll explain that as we go through the presentation.
Thanks, Lee. Evening, everyone. So during session 2, we ran some data on from April 2019 to January 2020. It was the first 10 months of that year. During that year, we noticed we completed 918 empty homes, repairing them as the moving in standard. There was 616 properties, 67% had repairs identified with them during the new tenant repairs. During the 616, there was 1,751 new tenant repairs completed at a cost of £130,000. This averaged out at 2.84 repairs per property. What we noticed was if we did the repairs to the property when they were empty, this equated to 291 hours. 3,502 miles were accrued and £500 on fuel at 38 miles a gallon. We would have used 1.6 tonnes of CO emissions. I've got a graph here which summarises the numbers. We've got on the left hand side, we've got 751 jobs, 616 repairs properties at a cost of £130,000. Again, on this page, we've got a summary of the graph, the average number of repairs per property. Again, this is on the first data that we ran. We noticed on the data that we ran, we identified top 3 tenant repairs. They were joinery, electrical and plumbing. There was a huge amount of joinery repairs we were doing to internal doors and windows sticking and not closing, and also 71 gates. These were easy repairs that we could have completed whilst the property was empty, thus saving the tenants sort of frustration in the first 6 weeks of moving in. I've highlighted 119 live tests there in red. What that is when we can't do an electrical test to comply with the electrical regs for when the property is empty, we do a dead test. So then if there's no power on the property, there's a debt on the meter. So what we then have to do is arrange with the tenant on the commissioning test when they move in to do the electrical live test there and then. Again, there was minor 59 light repairs and 34 socket repairs. There was basic plumbing repairs as well. 80 to the toilet, 51, which is so frustrating, to the tap repairs, and 33 gutter repairs. Gutter repairs is a funny one because we don't actually get up there and have a look at the gutters. We'd probably notice them when it's either raining or when the tenant rings up for a repair and identifies that there's a leak on the gutter or the gutters are blocked or such forth. Over to you, Lee.
Yeah, thanks, Ez. I think I'm just having a bit of it. There we go. So recommendations that came out of the discussion by the group came out loud and clear, was basically get your house in order. I think there was a lot of noise from the group around our post-inspection process, and basically were challenged by the group to lift our game. Make sure that those properties, every property that we do the works in, ready for the new tenant, making sure that all those repairs that we'd previously agreed would be done. So that was the first thing we had to do. The second was very much along the lines of, well, let's look at those new tenant repairs that we're doing, and can we do them when the property's empty? So like as we're saying, we may not necessarily do gutter repairs or external works as part of the existing standard, but actually you think, well, we've got joiners in the property doing repairs. It's not really a big deal if they need to fix the gate. Again, visual inspection of the gutters. If it's obvious that there's a blockage in the gutter because you can see the grass or something growing out the gutter, let's just get it cleaned while it's empty, and then hopefully that'll stop the need for that tenant to report the repair. And we'll try and do as much as we can when the property is empty. There's always going to be new tenant repairs, like as mentioned on the live test. Them sort of things we'll never be able to not do. And we're always going to have the emergency things come through where a light knob goes off or a radiator stops heating or something. And we'll always deal with that. But I think when we looked at the data, when you start looking at sort of nearly 3,000 repairs a year linking to doors sticking and windows sticking and a bit of skirting board missing, you start to think, actually, no, we need that. That's a good area that we need to focus on. Pre-termination inspections was something as well that came out, and that was very much to the point of the process when the tenant is ready to terminate and hand their keys in. We currently only inspect around about 25% of those properties, and that tends to be because those tenants wish to transfer to another council property. Now, our allocations policy clearly states that if you want to move from one council property to another, then you must have your existing property inspected. It must meet the moving out standard, and only then will you be allowed to move to another property. Obviously, there's exceptional circumstances, as you can imagine, but in general, that's the rule. But one of the things we've said is this is something that we're going to have to work a lot closer with our colleagues in housing management to make sure that we get into these properties on a more regular basis. So we're doing a lot of work around, well, actually, let's start identifying obvious defects when we're in the property, whether it's be a tradesperson or a housing officer or a physiotherapist or something. Any council employee Let's give them the technology, let's give them the training. So if they're in one of our homes and they identify that there's a bit of damage or the property is starting to fall into a little bit of dilapidation, actually let's get that reported and let's get that dealt with, so that we're not in a position where when a property does become empty, we've suddenly got to start spending thousands of pounds on it, getting it ready for the next tenant. Decoration was huge for us. Like I said before, it came out loud and clear that there's just too much decoration for new tenants. So what we agreed was that we would start building into our new moving in standard decoration. So what we've said was things like, if we put a new door on, we'll make sure it's painted. If we put a new bit of skirting board on, we'll make sure it's painted. What we'll say was actually, if we were finding some of our properties may have been heavily nicotine damaged through smoke. And normally we would just leave that for the new tenant. But what we've said is actually, no, we're going to tackle that now. And whether that's in the kitchen or the bathroom, they would be the main focus areas. And again, we'll make sure that if we plaster a full ceiling, we'll actually give that ceiling a couple of coats of emulsion just to give the tenant a fighting chance. And then we said, actually, let's look at reducing what paint pack offer, because that's around about £70,000, because it's not very popular, and we'll use that money to help support that programme. And then what we said was, we agreed any savings that we can drive, because we know we do around about 2,500 to 3,000 new tenant repairs a year anyway. If we can start doing more of those repairs when the property's empty, and then start to drive savings, like as mentioned before, with regards to fuel and time and things like that, any savings that we generate from doing things in a much better way, we'll actually invest in decoration. Something that was a bit of a curveball that we weren't expecting, because we kind of expected the expected the decoration to be fair, because that kind of came out of the tenant satisfaction surveys that we do. But rubbish became a big topic area. When you start thinking about it, it is quite interesting that if we've got a tenant who doesn't drive, and they have a old washing machine or a old settee or something that they don't want to take with them to their new home, especially if you've got a tenant who may be downsizing, how do they get rid of that? So the thought is they either have to hire a van. Now, we know some of our tenants are on low income. They can pay the council to come and do it for them, and pay the fee. Or what we're finding is 9 times out of 10, it's kind of left in the property. We have to then remove it. We raise that as rechargeable repair. And then obviously there's not only a cost to us to disposing of those items, but then there's also a cost to us to chasing that debt. So actually we said we need to think about that, and we need to identify if there is an issue, because it might be the fact that what we wanted to do was, is there an issue? We kind of said, yes, there is. So then we started to say, well, actually, can we start talking to some tenants and asking them if they would be prepared to contribute towards removing those goods? So what we kind of said then was, well, actually, let's carry out an exit survey. Let's start contacting tenants. Let's start asking them questions around how they're going to dispose of their rubbish. Well, first of all, we'll confirm that they need to dispose of their rubbish as part of the terms and conditions of the tenancy agreement. We'll ask them how they plan to do it. If any tenant is struggling to dispose of it, we'll try and nip that in the bud, and rather than just leaving it in the property for us to clear, we'll start having those conversations around, well, actually, is there a service there that we could provide, where maybe those tenants might pay a small charge, or maybe something that we say to the tenant, well, as long as you bring it outside, we'll take it away for free. So there was a lot of conversations within the group around actually what could that offer look like. Now, it's very early days, so that's why we agreed we'd carry out that survey for a few months. We'll bring some data in, and then what we'll do is we'll start discussing that. We'll just start discussing that information with the group, and then from there we'll try and define what we think an offer is going to look like. So a bit early days on that one. The other thing that came out loud and clear as well was in our flats. It was around cleaning. The feedback from the group was very much along the lines of, you can do as much as you want to the flat, and you can make the flats look immaculate, and you can paint them from top to bottom. But if the communal cleaning, if the communal areas are grubby, fly tipping, if there's muck on the walls and things like that, it doesn't make it a very appealing place to live. So although we carry out internal decoration every 5 years to our communal flats as part of our cylindrical painting programme, there was a big question raised around, actually, do we need to think about a cleaning programme within our communal blocks, whether that's once a year, twice a year, 4 times a year, whatever that might look like, just to make sure that our communal areas are looking fresh and clean. And again, that will just make those blocks of flats, hopefully, a nicer place to live. Early March, actually the day after the second session, we provided a briefing to the Cabinet Member for Housing. And basically, to be fair, he asked us to thank everybody who was involved, which we did. He was very impressed with everything we'd done. What we did quite a similar presentation to what this was, and we actually took Councillor Cox right through the whole process again, starting back in 2012. We brought him right up to speed, and then we finished off with explaining what we'd done as part of the review. He absolutely loved it. He absolutely loved the fact that we had members and we had tenants in minibuses driving around the borough, driving service improvement. What he did, he made a commitment to us, which was absolutely fantastic. And what he agreed was to fund some additional money to support the decoration. So what he did was he actually put some money in the pot for it, which we weren't expecting, which was absolutely fantastic. And it was certainly well received. But what it meant was, instead of us just having to rely on some savings and us rely on the money that would be generated by not delivering the paint packs, it was some additional cash that was actually invested, directly invested into the empty home standard.
So, wow, what a year it's been. COVID came and nearly stopped everything. Works were suspended in empty homes on the 23rd of March, and it didn't recommence until the 20th of May. This built up a backlog of 93 empty properties we couldn't go into until the 20th of May. However, what did help was the reduction in empty homes from what the year previously there was 210 empty properties came to us, when then this year only 83. This was probably a result of the COVID, with hardly anyone moving or leaving houses. Also, we had to work out what safe work practices we had to go through. This included risk assessments, method statements, educating the troops, educating tenants and training for everyone. We've then discussed about how many people were to work in properties. This was discussed with 1 person per property at one time. Then it was maybe a larger house, we might be able to get 2 in there. And also during the risk assessments, when there were risk assessments were being assessed and drawn up, we moved the PPE. The PPE came in, and obviously the costs came in on that as well. With the impact of COVID, obviously the performance went sky high. As you can see on this graph, the average number of days to complete an empty property was 43 days, compared to around about 13 or 14 what we normally do. As you can see on the graph on the amber line there, that's when we got back to working, we very quickly got that back down to normal at Christmas. So what have we done? We've redrafted in the last year. We've redrafted the moving in standard, which includes a wide range of repairs for new tenants. We're trying to do them as much as we can when the property's empty. We've increased the redecoration standard, which I must say is a great help. And the troops are very proud of what they're producing at the moment. The redecoration sort of sells the house to the new tenant coming in. They look really clean and tidy. We've circulated the revised standard to the group for comments, and the comments from the group have been very forthcoming and very positive, and we've produced the final moving in standard. We've also, with the new money from the member, we've basically recruited 4 painters. This is going well. The 4th painter just joined after Christmas there, and it's going really well with the painters, and the feedback from the all trades is, you know, this should have happened ages ago. We've commenced communal cleaning project, which Lee alluded to before. It's a great help cleaning the communal entrances to these properties when a tenant's viewing the properties. And we've also commenced the exit surveys, which I think will be a great help regarding the waste and what to do with the tenant's old waste. Hope you've done it again.
I think it's I think I need training. There we go. So I mean, as you can see, we've done absolutely loads, but for us, it's all about the outcomes. It's really important that we're able to measure the success of what that review was. We want to be able to ultimately see a big reduction in those new tenant repairs. So that's an area that we've been keeping focus on. There's a big piece of work getting done behind the scenes to start identifying what those financial savings would look like, because we're obviously with each repair we're not doing now, we're not taking the call in the contact centre, we're not raising the job, we're not allocating it to an operative. That operative isn't then having to get in his van and drive to the property and do the repair and all that sort of stuff. So actually we're trying to pull all of that together so we can start seeing what that true cost is. Because my feedback has been brilliant, certainly the declaration has been so positive. Again, we're never going to be in a position to decorate every property. Like as mentioned, the money that we got from Councillor Cox does just fund 4 painters. I'm saying just absolutely fantastic that we've been able to employ 4 additional team members to do that decoration. We are having to prioritise what we are painting, so it is making sure that there's no tackling nicotine, tackling sort of any new doors, make sure they're painted, make sure there's no wallpaper hanging off and things like that. But again, what we've done is when we started talking to our colleagues across the region, we're actually one of the only authorities who actually does a lot of decorating. Everybody else seems to still be going with the paint packs and going with the vouchers and things. So again, we're trying to sort of make sure that North Tyneside is seen there as the sort of like constantly increasing the bar for others to follow. So again, the exit survey, it's frustrating because we've been doing it for a few months now, but what we've found is with the with obviously the impact of COVID, we haven't got a lot of tenants terminating their tenancies, and we haven't got a lot of tenants leaving. So the numbers of empty properties coming through the door is actually been quite low over recent months, as you can imagine. Not many people want to move. On the back of that as well, obviously the government put a stop on evictions. So again, we weren't evicting people and things over those few months. So our actual numbers have been low, which means our exit surveys have been low. So what we've said is actually rather than just wait, we're going to do something different, and we're going to start sort of doing a little bit more with some new tenants, just to get their thoughts and their opinions around when you left your last property. How did you manage? How did you deal with your rubbish? How did you deal with your getting rid of your old furniture and things like that you didn't want anymore? And again, just see if there is an offer in there, because I think there probably is, and I think it's really important that we help tenants to help themselves. Because if we don't, I think what we're finding is a lot of our tenants will just leave it in the property, and then it becomes quite a big cost to us, especially when you think a tenant ultimately can take their furniture to a waste recycling centre for free, whereas if we take it, it's commercial waste, so obviously we have to pay. So again, we want to try and encourage tenants as much as we can and help them to help themselves. So again, what we're trying to do was, and this is where the first graph came in. The first graph you looked at was the pre-review measure, which was the blue. So it's been quite tricky trying to get the data, because we've tried to exclude the months where we had the big lockdown, and then obviously after the lockdown had ended, the number of empty homes that came through the door was still quite low. So it's been really hard to get some apples for apples comparisons, but we've tried to do it the best we can just to give you a bit of an idea of the impact that it's had. So what we found was the first graph that has showed the blue was kind of giving you some data over a 10-month period, which was sort of April 2019 to January 2020, which sort of showed you how much we'd been spending on new tenant repairs and how many new tenant repairs we'd been doing over that period of time. What we've done then is we've looked at the post review. So once we've done that review and we brought in the new processes, we brought in the new decorators, and we started tackling those new tenant repairs. What we've done is we've tried to give you a bit of a flavour of what that data is telling us from June 2020 to October 2020. Again, that's a 5-month period. So trying to do the maths, you sort of say the post-review was 5 months, the pre-review was 10 months, double it up, and we'll be hopefully somewhere near apples for apples. And again, we've tried to just miss out some of the big key lockdown areas. We still use the same format for the reports, so it's still exactly the same reports that's been churned out the system. They're just over different date criterias. So again, what you'll see there is when you look at that graph, the blue was pre-review. So again, that's telling us that over that 10-month period between April 2019 and January 20, we did 1,751 new tenant repairs. After the review, we did 380. That is only over a 5-month period, but we're quite confident that even if you doubled that up and you got your 760 new tenant repairs, still a huge reduction of what we're doing post-review. Again, the number of properties, we did new tenant repairs to 616 properties over that 10-month period. Again, over that 5-month period, 180. Even if you double it up to 360, you're still looking at half. And again, the cost, do the maths again, double up to 24, you're hitting the £50,000 mark. Again, huge reduction from the previous 10 months. It's not apples for apples. There's going to be a lot of anomalies within that data. And what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to thrash that out as the months go by and make sure we can get some proper apples for apples data. But what all I wanted to do here was just sort of to present to the fact that as far as we're concerned, the review was actually a really big success, and we've got some really good tangible outcomes on there. And again, even if you look at the average graph, we're nearly doing 3 repairs per new tenant. Prior to the review, we're now doing just over 2 repairs per tenant. So on the assumption that we do 1,000 empty properties a year, you're kind of saying within the first few months of that review being done, we've actually reduced it by nearly 1,000 repairs. So again, not apples for apples, but what it does is just start to give you a feel and a bit of a flavour that actually it's been really, really successful, this review. So still stuff to do. One of the things we did was, even though we've now approved the moving in standard with both the members and the tenants who are part of that group, it's still a bit, it's still a little bit wordy. So what we want to do is want to get some photos in there and just make it look nicer. We still need to pass it to the council's corporate branding team, because obviously everything has to be rubber stamped to make sure that it's in the right format and it's in the right font and things like that. So once we've got some photos in, we'll hand that over to our corporate team, who will rebrand it. And then what we'll look to do is get that new standard onto the website. We need to update the Repairs and Investment Service Development Group. Although some of those tenants were part of this review, because of the lockdown and the inability to get those tenants in a room with us, we haven't really done much scrutiny with that group over the last 12 months. So again, what we need to do is very quickly get that big group of tenants in a room, take them through what we've done, and make sure they're part of that process as well. We need to conclude that waste review, and then once that's done, present that to the cabinet member with some options for him to consider. Again, the communal cleaning project. At the minute, what we're kind of doing with that is we're doing a lot of work with tenants and leaseholders. And again, it's that thing around, well, we're just asking them the questions, a bit of soft market testing. Would you be prepared to pay for it? If yes, how much would you be prepared to pay for it? Leaseholders are quite a big one in there. We've got about 900 leaseholders across our housing stock. So again, be interested to see how much they would be willing to pay. We do get a lot of complaints from leaseholders when they suddenly tell us that they want to sell their flat, but they're finding it difficult to sell it because of the condition of the communal area, which obviously sits with us. So again, it'll be interesting how that works through. But again, once we've concluded that project, we'll then be sitting down with the cabinet member again with some options and get his thoughts and hopefully get some decisions on that. And obviously a big one for us is we want to continue to monitor the outcomes, monitor that data. We want to get that data as accurate as we can, make sure we do the comparison as accurate as we can. And then a big one for us, like I said, is bringing all of that other stuff together around how much is it saving on fuel, how much saving on officers' time. You suddenly start thinking about, actually, if we're not doing 1,000 new tenant repairs and we start doing other standard repairs quicker, does that mean that tenants are going to have to wait less time to get their normal repairs done? So again, you can start quantifying that as a good service improvement for our tenants. And that was that was pretty much it for a bit of a whistle-stop tour. Don't know if anyone's got any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
John Hunter.
Councillor Hunter to come in. Councillor Hunter.
Sorry about that. You're on about your repairs, Lee. The last members' inquiry I put through for a repair to somebody's bathroom was it talk about nightmare tenants, right? Nightmare council workers in the place. Put a toilet pan in, went away home, man went to use the toilet and flooded the place because they didn't connect it up properly. And then also the plasterer was plastering the walls, got halfway down and went home, left the bottom half. And it gets worse. You bought some second-hand tiles to tile the walls. They weren't square. We'll just say they were 5 inches one side and 4 inches on the other side. So it's an impossibility to do it right. And you had bought them. You must have got a job lot on the market somewhere. So you're not doing that well, my opinion.
John, do you want me to take that as a specific address there to look into? Or?
Being put right, but I'm talking about this is what happened. Then they had to get it put right. They had to scrape all the tiles off. The fella had to mop up because he flooded the place because everybody went home because they hadn't whatever they had to do to put a toilet in. I don't know a plumber. I think the fella that put it in wasn't a plumber. It must have been a joiner or something.
Councillor Hunter, if I can intercede, I think what Councillor Hunter is alluding to is who's quality controlling the repairs. So, do we sign off every single property? If so, how are these minor? Well, I wouldn't say minor for the resident, but things which should be picked up under quality control. How are they being missed? I think that's what Councillor Hunter's alluding to.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, the challenge we've always got is we do around about 48,000 repairs a year. We do around about 16,000 gas services a year. We do around about 800 disabled adaptations a year. So as you can imagine, the numbers are huge. What we try and do is we've got a post-inspection regime in place, which is picked up by our team leaders and it's picked up by our repairs coordinators. And I think the challenge we're always going to have is we're never ever going to be able to do 100%. And we do obviously rely heavily on our tenants also being Clogher Works. What we try and do with regards to our post-inspection regime is we'll try and make sure that every operative will have an inspection done, but can only be a few times a year. There's actually some of our quality control, some of it's legislative. So with regards to our gas servicing, we have to carry out proper quality assurance inspections on our gas servicing engineers, but that's actually them doing a proper quality. It's ultimately they do a second gas service to make sure that the engineer who attended has done that correctly. And again, that takes time. I think across our service, we've probably got around about 10 people who provide that quality control, but unfortunately that's not their day job. Their day job tends to be actually managing the workforce, managing the materials, managing the appointments, allocating the works. So again, I think you're right. I think quality assurance is always going to be a big one, a big agenda item, certainly for our tenants and certainly for ourselves, because again, you know yourself, if we have to send somebody back to that property, that's a cost to her. It's not like, to be fair, it's not like when it was Kia and Kia did it for free. We know that if every time we have to send somebody back to that property, it's not completed right first time. We know it comes at a cost to us, and there's no point in saying, oh, we don't get paid, because we do. So actually, you're absolutely right. I think the challenge for us is trying to come up with good ways where for those properties that we can't get to, we've got those methods in place that tenant can very quickly give us instant feedback. And again, what we're doing as part of our IT offer is looking at things like apps and things like that, so that a tenant can just take a photograph and say, I'm not happy with that, fly it straight into the team, and the team can tackle it quickly. And at the moment, we don't have that, even though our contact centre does brilliantly, and they're answering the telephone calls within a few seconds and all the rest of it. It's still inconvenient for a tenant, I think, to have to pick up the phone and ring in and say, actually, the plumber was here and it's leaking and things like that. So again, we want to try and use the data intelligence when all this is coming in. Is a particular person that we need to provide a bit extra training it, because we know that we've got 140 operatives across the service, and the vast majority of them are absolutely fantastic. But I think Councillor Hunter's right. You do get, like in any world, some people have off days, and it's up to us to try and make sure that those off days are minimised, and make sure that the tenants are provided with the best service we possibly can. But I definitely take the point though, Councillor Hunter.
Councillor Hunter, would you like to ask anything else?
Just one thing is I'm trying to get a shortcut here. How old's a house got to be, council house, before you retile the roof?
Decent Home Standard suggests 60 years. What we do is, within our 30-year business plan, we actually put funding in the 30-year business plan to replace the roof between 60 to 70 years is standard. What we do, however, every year, we constantly monitor the amount of repairs and maintenance works that's getting done on roofs across the borough, because we have actually done it where once we get the data to say, I don't know, repairs and maintenance are spending a lot of money on a particular estate doing roof repairs, what we'll do is we'll highlight that and we'll bring that scheme forward, and we'll do it whenever it needs to be done, really. But to answer the question, the government decent home standard is 60 years.
Oh, because there's got some bungalows in Gilsend Avenue in Houghton. And I look through the chimney pots are ready to fall down, and the roofs look terrible.
No.
Just on Saturday.
No, more than happy to get that checked out. That's not a problem at all.
Well, I built 50s in my opinion.
To be honest, Councillor, if they were built in the 50s, they're probably due. To be honest, it's normally sort of like, if they haven't been done now, it wouldn't surprise us if they're in the foreseeable future. Because it is normally 60, 70 years when we start planning them into our business plan. But I'm certainly get that checked out. I know there's a lot of pointing work being done in your ward, because obviously the brickwork.
I think I'm having IT issues here.
So we know we've done a lot of pointing and wall tie replacements in your ward, because again, a lot of the properties are sort of 50s, 60s built, and again, the decent home standard says every 60 years you repoint it, you do the wall tie replacements. So normally where brickwork and where roofing do tend to mirror each other within a few years of each other. We try not to do it at the same time, because it's very, very noisy and inconvenient for a tenant, because you're constantly putting scaffolds up and taking scaffolds down. So we'll normally do either the roofing 1 year and maybe the walling 1 or 2 years later, or we'll do the walling first and then a couple of years later we'll do the roofs. But I'll certainly pick Gilsend Avenue up, and I'll get the team to look into that.
Thank you.
And Councillor Parker Leonard.
Hiya, good evening everyone. Thanks, Chair. I was just wondering, I really appreciated being part of that group. I really enjoyed it. It was really good being going out with the tenants as well. Made it really interesting. I was just wondering, as you said, it'll be sort of coming to a close. Will there be a role for that group moving forward? Will you still be engaging with with that group? Yeah. And then I was just wondering about moving forward, whether there would be an opportunity for like a mystery shopper or like spot checks, so we could check in and get some feedback. And then another quick thought was, is there anywhere on any form or anything that captures feedback from the residents, so good, positive stories and things like that? You've got a lot of data about, the savings you've made, but what about quantitative data? True, real stories coming from residents. And then just, if you don't mind, another quick point. We did briefly discuss vulnerable tenants and how we could support them, and I think it's really good what you've done about looking at the pain packs and that they don't suit everyone. but I know we did have brief conversations about maybe more vulnerable young families or younger tenants, and actually they might not have the skills to be able to do those. So do you think eventually those you might have already sort of have it covered elsewhere, but do you think those savings might be able to be put into the more vulnerable tenants to go a little bit extra for those? And that's all my comments and questions. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for me I think with regards to the moving in and moving out standard, I think we'll probably always be doing a big review every 2 or 3 years, because that's what we've done historically and it's always worked great. I think for me, because the group works so well and everyone in the group gelled, one of the things I've been doing is talking with Adam Hagg and Peter Brady from our engagement team around how we can start playing that group into other housing projects. Not just necessarily empty homes in sort of empty home repairs, but actually what else can we get those groups involved in? I think mystery shopping is really, really important. It's something that we've been talking to our tenant service development group. We've got a lot of tenants who are very, very keen to get involved, but some of them don't have the skills to sort of do the teams, which is quite sad. So again, we're trying to work out ways on how we can get them actively involved. And one of the things we've talked about was things like mystery shopping, where either they would just basically ring the contact centre and try a bit of that, or it might be where we'll just grab a few of those group. We'll hire a minibus and we'll just go out and we'll try and surprise Ez and keep him on his toes, and we'll do a few spot checks and things like that just to keep things sort of fresh and keep things moving. I think the vulnerability one was very important as well. I mean, we've always fast track repairs for those tenants who need it, but I think the hope was I think the additional investment by Councillor Cox was we weren't expecting it, so we never really planned on having 4 painters within the team. We always thought that would be sort of like scraping sort of Rob and Peter to pay Paul, but I think now we've got those 4 painters and we're starting to get our ducks aligned on how much paint we do in each of the properties, because we're trying to target those and get the level of decoration quite as high as we can on every property. So what we're hoping is that when tenants do start getting keys to our homes, every tenant will benefit from it, as well as the and then hopefully what we'll be able to do as well, start expanding into our sort of a garden loan scheme and things like that. And again, just trying to do our best for tenants to help themselves. And I think there's one more question, and I can't remember what it was.
Or the feedback form. Is there anywhere that you can capture sort of good news stories that have?
Absolutely. Back in the good old days, we used a system called Vision Management, and what we did was we randomly selected repairs, we randomly selected new tenants, and we sent them a questionnaire in the post, and they filled it in and they posted it back, and it was very, very expensive, and it didn't really do much. What we've done now, because we weren't learning from it, you think if you're not learning from it, what's the point? So what we've now done is we've got a product called Microsoft Forms, and what we're able to do now is we can actually give a tenant it's like a web link, and they can go onto the web link and they can give instant feedback. So what we've done is for every single service area within sort of housing property construction, whether it be gas service, new tenant repairs, aids and adaptations, we've had these cards printed, and each service area has their own coloured card. And the idea of it is that every single tenant who touches our service will have the opportunity to provide feedback. And what they can do is they can literally just click on the link, and they can ask. And what we've done is kept it very easy. It's smiley faces and stars and all that sort of stuff. So it's not like I think historically it was all like score 1 to 10 and things like that, which never really worked. This was very much along the lines of just tell us what you think, positive or negative. Just give you your thoughts. If it's negative, we'll come straight back to you and we'll resolve any problems you've got. If it's positive, then that's great. We'll use that to generate the goodwill stories, because I think you're right. I think as a service, we do lots and lots of great stuff, but we're not very good at sort of telling everybody how good we are. And that feels sometimes a bit wrong, because everyone tends to just focus on the small number of complaints we get. And like I mentioned before, we're a huge service area, and we probably enter our tenants' lives 3 or 4 times a year. Everybody gets a gas service, and everyone normally gets 1 or 2 repairs, and then obviously they're interacting with our housing management colleagues, and we've always said our tenants can't switch. They're kind of stuck with it. They can't move to another provider, so we've got a big responsibility to make sure that we provide our tenants with the best service we can. But no, you're absolutely right though. So they're going to be going live. They all got printed. They're in Adam's room, and they'll start be getting dished out with every bit of our service, and all that feedback will come in. And obviously that's the sort of stuff we can share with you as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. That answers all of them.
Councillor Percy.
Yes, hello. My question's about household rubbish collections. Now, I've had 2 cases recently. One was in Richmond Grove in North Shields, where the lady was moving house and she had quite a bit of household furniture to move. And she phoned the council, paid the £40, had all the stuff to be taken away, and they gave her a date. And they never turned up on that date, so she phoned again, gave another date, and never turned up. Now, this happened about 4 or 5 times. At the end, she had to get a private contractor, pay him to take the stuff away. And she's never getting a refund on her money from the council, although she's applied for it, she hasn't had a refund. The second one, it's about a fella who lives in West Avenue, North Shields. He's just recently had a stroke and he can hardly speak and he can hardly walk. But before he'd had his stroke, he put out a settee into his path, or some item of furniture, paid the £40, and that was 2 months ago, and it still wasn't picked up until last week. Now, I got a phone call from his mother, because obviously he can't speak very well. His mum phoned me on his behalf and said that they've been waiting 2 months to have this taken away. When she'd phoned the council a week or so ago, they told her she had to wrap it up. She had to wrap it up before they could take it away. Now, this is like 2 months later. He paid his money and everything else. Now, the upshot of that was I managed to get in touch with Mark Blacklock on Friday morning, and I spoke to him and I told him what the problem was, that the fella had paid, and he'd done a fantastic job. He picked it up within 5 minutes. It was gone. And I phoned the fella's mother, and she was absolutely delighted. In fact, she was pleased, she started to cry, you know. She was just pleased it was all sorted. But that's just 2 of the problems that people have. Now, I'd be quite prepared to go around and wrap it up myself for them, but I didn't have anything to wrap it up with, you know. So obviously I couldn't do it. But that's the 2 problems I had.
No, I mean, I think they're good points. I mean, that's a service that's provided by the council's environmental services, so that isn't a housing service. But you're absolutely right. And what we found is, because that's a paying service, I mean, you'll probably remember even things like pest control is a paying service. But our cabinet member made the decision back in April that council tenants would get that service for free. So that's something that council tenants no longer have to pay for. And I think that has come out of the Empty Homes Review, because you're right, one of the problems that our tenants have is we know they're on low income, and the options are they either have to dispose of it themselves, and if they don't have a car, that can be quite difficult, or they have to pay the council's environmental services to come and collect it. And again, one of the things that we think of is, as a responsible landlord, do we need to step in a bit more and support those tenants? So again, because I suppose from our point of view, when it comes to our tenants, we've got 130 vans flying around the borough at any one time. If it's something where it's picking up I would rather, one of the things me and Ez have talked about, we would rather pick up that settee now than suddenly inherit that settee when that tenant leaves the property. Because at least then we can collect it outside the property and we can dispose of it. And I think that's something that's coming out of this review, is this something that we can do at a reduced cost for our council tenants? Rather, because obviously I think the council, from memory, the council's got like set fees depending on what those items are. But as part of our waste review for council tenants, that's when we're saying, well, actually, how much of it's costing the housing department now? And can we offer a service to our tenants, which is either at no cost or at a reduced cost? And that's hopefully something that will come out of the review. But like I say, we'll certainly be keeping you updated with how that goes.
Okay, thanks very much. Yeah, that's pretty clear.
Brilliant. Councillor Furloway?
Thanks, Chair. I don't really understand why the council are doing decoration now. I think we're shifting sort of the responsibility for decorating your home from the resident, from the individual to the council. It just seems like a big shift in actually what the council should be doing and what it shouldn't be doing.
I think it was very much more to do with the new tenant inheriting the property from the previous tenant, and if that previous tenant has not maybe been a heavy smoker, or maybe there might be stains on the walls and things like that. A lot of our tenants felt it was dirty. The properties were dirty, and what we found was they weren't dirty because we've actually got a good cleaning regime in place for the properties. But you probably know yourself, you can't clean nicotine damage on woodwork. You actually have to put a stain block on, and you've got to decorate it properly. And what we found was when our tenants were getting the keys to those homes, the amount of decoration that they needed to do on the day they got their keys was just overwhelming, and it was just sort of removing the nice experience that it should be getting the keys for the first time. So it is only a one-off process. It is only for the new tenant. Once that tenancy starts, the tenant's still responsible for the decoration during that tenancy. This is very much along the lines of just trying to invest a little bit more into that empty property, just to give those new tenants a bit more of a start. And our thought is that if we can give them a home that's in a good condition, hopefully they'll look after it more.
But isn't that the reality for pretty much everyone who moves into a new property, regardless if it's council, private, or you've bought your own home?
Oh, absolutely.
Decorating is a huge responsibility, but it's something that people have just got to get on with.
Yep, absolutely.
And it just seems that actually the shift in responsibility to the council is just seems a bit unwarranted. It just doesn't seem sort of right. I think people should be responsible for that. For that. So that's just a bit strange in my opinion. But that the council's taken that on. My other question is about reclaiming the money from damaged. When you leave a property and there's damage to the property, actually reclaiming that money. From the people who leave it in that state, often people who go to a different council house. Is there an update on that? Because I know we discussed that obviously at the last meeting, which was over 12 months ago. So I'm just wondering if there's...
I don't have any facts and figures with this. Obviously, we do, any damage that's caused, we do raise that as a recharge repair. If it's a tenant wishing to transfer to another council property, damage will stop that move, unless there's exceptional circumstances, which would still allow the move and they would take the debt with them. But that is very few and far between. That tends to be around if we've got a tenant who may be fleeing domestic violence or fleeing serious antisocial behaviour. Those exceptional circumstances doesn't mean the debt's written off. The debt goes with them. If a tenant leaves the property and moves out of the borough or moves into a different accommodation, we will chase that debt. And if needed, we will use debt collectors to chase that debt. It does get to the point when it is, if we still can't collect it, it may be written off. But obviously that goes on the file to make sure that they will never get another council property until that gets cleared. I don't have any rechargeable repair data with us, but I can certainly provide some if you'd like.
That's great, just because I think the vast majority of the residents and tenants do the right thing, and I think people who damage the property then leave, assuming that they can get away with it. They're hurting, the system. So I think it's really important that actually people are responsible for their actions when they do damage the property. So that's great. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Councillor Furloway. Lee, just quickly, while I've got you, following on from what Councillor Furloway is saying, I do believe that one of the main problems with getting the empty home standard correct is the moving out standard. I think I've said this to you before, Lee. I remember being in an army property and it had to be perfect when you hand it over. Now, I obviously understand we're never going to be able to get to that level because the situation is completely different. But I don't think it's unreasonable as a provider to turn around and say, well, if you're leaving this property, we expect X, Y, and Z to be put right. So I think we really need to look at the moving out standard as well. As for the decorating, just to try to confirm something, because I kind of understand what Councillor Thurlow is on about. Nobody would expect the council to decorate a 3-bedroom house with wallpaper and glitter walls and stuff like that. I get that. Are we just saying you go in there, there's a big stain, there's a bit of an issue here, so you just whitewash it. You just get it to a nice standard, so like a blank canvas, so then the resident can come in and put their own stamp on. Because if that's the type of decorating you're on about, I'm all in favour of it. As a responsible landlord, I think it's more than reasonable to expect that. I know as a private landlord, you wouldn't have to do that, but as a responsible landlord, if all we're talking about is putting some whitewash on so it's a blank canvas, it's nice and it's neat, I'm more than happy for that to go forward. So is that the type of decorating
that's exactly what it is. I mean, with our 4 decorators, we'll never be able to fully paint all the walls and fully paint all the ceilings and things like that. So it's very much targeted. So it's very much things like there's a stain on the ceiling. And it's what we'll do is we'll put a stain block on and we will emulsion that ceiling. Or it might be the previous tenant painted the walls black. What we'll do is we'll put a blocker on and we'll give it a couple of coats of Magnolia or something. It's that sort of stuff, because as you can imagine, some of our properties, the tenants might paint the ceilings black, and if you don't do it properly, you could put 101 coats of white on and it'll still come through. And I think stuff like that, we think it's just a little bit, I think that's what the tenants found were just overwhelming. But you're right, we're not wallpaper or anything like that. It's simply going in with paintbrushes and just trying to a little bit of emotion in, a little bit of gloss in, and just trying to take some of that sort of overwhelmness away.
No problem. Well, thank you very much. I think before we finish, does anybody else have any other questions? I believe that's everything. Well, first off, I just want to say to both of you, thank you very much on behalf of the committee for all your hard work during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I understand it's been it's a challenging area to work in anyway, let alone with a global pandemic. So thank you very much for all that, your hard work. It is much appreciated. That does conclude the meeting. I want to, on behalf of the committee, also thank all the officers, especially Emma, for looking after us, making sure the committee meetings have gone forward, making sure that we're all got all the equipment, all the streaming's working. It's been a very challenging year, and without the hard work of the officers, it wouldn't have been a success. So thank you very much on behalf of the committee. That concludes the meeting, and I want to thank everybody for attending and wish you all a safe night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.